Leading the charge against the heroic Maximals, it is the leader of the Predacons and the very last model of the 2023 Transformers collaboration. It is TFM02, Tyra-Megatron. With the kits of Kernel, Ghost Shot, Hyper Wave, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Weapon Master, which adds a percentage of the leg's resist stats to power when attacking, both towards shooting and towards melee respectively. Now, as the final model of the collaboration, Megatron makes it very clear that, much like Prime and Primal, Megatron also is very utility-oriented while still maintaining an air of power and authority whenever he's on the field. Between 3 different skills, making him effectively a solid all-rounder type without ever needing that leg ability, he's a very solid model that can cover a majority of bases, not just from the start of the fight, but the longer it drags on as well. Kernel on the head part is a support-based skill that, once activated, grants a stack of Conceal to himself and all allies across the team, which renders them immune to any Pierce or AoE effects, and also buffs their evade by 50% until attacked. In addition to this, Kernel will also grant a stack of Stealth to Megatron exclusively, making him untouchable through his entire next cooldown and heat phase, or effectively his next turn, unless he's already being targeted. In addition, Stealth also allows him to bypass any pesky shields that might be in play that might potentially hold him back or intercept him to keep him from potentially attacking anyone else in his way. Ghost Shot on the right arm, and arguably one of his most powerful forms of base damage, is a very exceptionally strong shooting-based skill that gains bonus damage relative to the user's charge gauge, but also packs passive defense ignore. And looking at about nearly a base over 1900 damage there before any other modifiers, that already alone is going to be an immensely powerful blow right from square one, even if it does require you to use some charge to make the most of its immense power. Hyper Wave on the left arm is a brand new skill being introduced into the game that is essentially kind of following a trend that we've been seeing for a while of essentially just souping up a lot of older ailments that we've already had, such as Hyper Freeze, Hyper Thunder, or in case of Prime, Hyper Thunder Shot. Basically, it's the same thing but with Wave, which, upon attacking the target, deals just a little bit more damage than a conventional Wave attack, but will still inflict the no defense status on them, which, while inflicted with this, means that the ailed target will be guaranteed every hit that lands will be a critical hit, no matter what. That means every hit is going to be immensely painful no matter which way you put at it as well. Biped Legs means that Megatron will also have pretty solid coverage across all terrains, as when it comes to versatility and variety, Biped Legs have the best of all worlds across most terrains. With the base mobility of 796, definitely not the fastest on the field, but he does most certainly make up for that with some very nice HP and resist stats as well. And same can be said for his evade, which also is not absurdly high at about mid 700s. Again, not the greatest thing on the field, but he most certainly makes up for it in other ways. A melee resist of 1631 and a shoot resist of almost 1400 means that he is most certainly going to be very tanky and chunky on the field, which means even if he does end up taking a blow point blank to the face, it's going to be absurdly difficult actually being able to take this guy down. And that's not even touching on his very high armor specs either, at 4000 for the head, 4100 for the left, 3900 for the right, and about 4700 for the legs, means that he's most certainly not only chunky, but also absurdly tanky and very high HP pool as well. Weapon Master also ties in very nicely with his kit as well, as it means that between his two absurdly high base melee and shoot resist stats, that also means he has an even higher base power that can be added as bonus damage whether he uses Ghost Shot or Hyper Wave respectively, because if he uses Ghost Shot, it checks his shoot resist, whereas Hyper Wave, it checks his melee respectively. Now, as always, with both Prime and Primal, Megatron, as of course befitting and expected of a Transformers-type model, is also indeed capable of meta-changing and transforming into a Tyrannosaur-based model, in this case instead donning his respective Predacon-type look. In this form, he exchanges his entire kit out for Deathlock, Destroy, Clock Rage, Biped Legs maintained, but the leg ability changes to Bloodstain, which buffs his base power when attacking and breaking parts. Now, in this form, the first thing you will notice is that he's using another brand new skill to the table, and all three of his skills also require CG to use. This means that in this form, he's most certainly going to be a little more aggressive-oriented, especially once he officially hits the field and is able to transform effectively. Deathlock on Drive A is an ailment-based skill that, upon attacking the target and successfully inflicting the target with the ailment, it will render the target's heat and cool stats debuffed by 25%, making them notably slower than they were before, but also slap them with both no dodge and no defend on top of that. That means that any hit that goes toward that particular target is guaranteed to not only land, but also be immensely painful at a guaranteed critical hit on top of that. Destroy on Drive B, and a melee variant at that, is a gambling skill that is conventional but also hard to use depending on the situation. But if you are able to correctly target a foe's part that they are going to use, heat phase, had used, cooldown phase, or intercepts a shield that is in play, if it meets any of these above requirements, the part in question is immediately destroyed, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But if it does not meet any of these requirements, it instead will deal regular damage, or minimal damage at best depending on the situation. Clock Rage on Drive C is another brand new skill, as mentioned, being introduced to the game, but simply explained, and that actually is a typo here on the particular slide. What it actually does is add 50% of the target's mobility stat to the base power when attacking. That means the faster the target, the more punish damage you deal upon nuking them afterwards. This effectively will kind of tie it in right there with Sujigiri in a lot of senses as a fast opponent punisher in this case. Now, even though it doesn't deal pierce damage much like Sujigiri does, or may not be nearly as powerful as it is still effectively a very good way to punish and pester anyone that is notably faster than Megatron, which actually would tie rather nicely into his kit of being just a little more sluggish on the backside and being able to make use of that. On the topic of stats, though, while transformed, his armor pool does come together at a nice almost 17,000, which is very, very nice in this respect. But you will also notice that his resist stats and his evade mobility almost essentially mirror in this case, as his melee resist goes down tremendously, almost 800 points, down to low 900s, and his shoot resist down to almost 900 in this case, almost 500 points, which means he's sacrificing a lot, and I mean a lot, of his bulk and his resist stats to keep his damage low. However, he does trade it though by pouring those extra numbers into his evade at over 1400, almost effectively doubling what it was before, and pumping his mobility up almost 200 solid points up to low 900s, which means in this form he's most certainly going to be a lot faster than he was before, even if he will be particularly more punishing when transforming between one form and the other. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I still do have to rate Megatron a pretty solid 7.5 out of 10. He does cover a lot of bases particularly well between both forms, effectively as a utility/punisher kind of fighter in this case. Much like Primal was with anti-effect in this case being another punisher type move, Megatron kind of is another vein in the same tree in this respect. Between Ghost Shot and Hyper Wave, again kind of going towards slowing enemies down or punishing them with nuke skills, and then Deathlock, Destroy, and then Clock Rage as additional punish skills on top of that, or setup skills. He effectively can kind of fill a lot of roles decently well depending on where you put him. Albeit, you do have to exercise a lot of caution when transforming, because even though he gets more aggressive in change mode, he trades a lot of his resist stats and bulk for speed and some extra power in this sense. As a mixed part score, I do have to rate him just a little, to actually just rate him equally as well at about a 7.5 out of 10 as well, given that even though you really aren't missing a whole lot really between Deathlock, Destroy, and Clock Rage, even though it is a brand new skill, and it is shiny and new in this case, you're not missing out on a lot, like I said, because between Hyper Wave and Ghost Shot, it's going to be a good chunk of where Megatron's base damage is going to be, primarily because Ghost Shot and Hyper Wave are the only skills he has that can deal pierce damage. Ghost Shot in particular being the highest base potential of damage output of any skill he brings to the field. However, if you are willing to sacrifice some speed for it, the bulk of his leg parts honestly do very easily forgive the lower speed, being just shy of 800 at best, which means he will most certainly be outrun in current competitive meta. But if you use him right or punish correctly with, say, Sujigiri, or in this case, a pure set for Clock Rage, then you can punish anyone that does outrun him with some bonus damage on top of his already sluggish speed and tanky stats.